What is up, New Beginnings Church? Happy Monday morning to you and welcome to our devotional series. So glad to have you on, and I'm excited for today because we're back in a parable again. So parables are my favorite. We're in this series called The Red Letters. If you don't know, this thing has been running for quite a while, and I don't know how many more chapters we got. Probably about five more chapters, something like that. It's good though. Basically, a walk through the book of Matthew, honing in on the red letters of Jesus. And so today, as we're in Matthew chapter 22, we're in a parable. It's a really big parable. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a lot of verses for sure. But it's a parable, and I'll read for you the first part of it here. It says this. It says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servants to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. Then he sent some more servants and said, 'Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My ox and my fatted cattle, they've been butchered. Everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they paid no attention. They went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest seized his servants and mistreated and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to the servants, 'The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find.' So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, as the bad, I love this line, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests." We'll leave it right there for now. So 3 big observations about this parable. Number 1, remember this, because if you didn't watch any of the devotions from last week, we talked about how this whole section is Jesus giving a warning and a rebuke to Israel and Israel's leaders, the Jewish religious leaders, about missing the point, missing out on what God was trying to do in them and through them, and him giving them a warning. So you can see this very clear, that he's saying, hey, there is a wedding feast for the Son. This is Jesus, the Messiah. And he goes, you were invited, but you rejected Jesus. And so not only did you reject Jesus, you rejected all of God's servants, and that's why you mistreated and killed the prophets when God sent them to you. And so remember, even though we're in chapter 22, Matthew didn't write chapter and verse. We added that stuff later. So this is just a continuation. It's a furthering of that warning and rebuke to say, don't miss out on the wedding feast of the Son, and don't you dare mistreat his servants. And then again, there's this over-the-top language of judgment laced in there for those who reject the Son. And so anyway, that's observation number 1. It's really just a continuation of what we talked about last week. The second observation is this, though. Let's just go back to the meat of the parable. When Jesus uses those words, that the kingdom of heaven is like something, look at this parable. He goes, it's like a feast. Like, the kingdom of heaven is a good thing. It's a great thing. It's something you want to be invited into. It's something that you want to be a part of. It's awesome. I don't know about you, but I love coming to parties. I love going out for dinner. I love great food. I love it all. That's what the kingdom is like. The kingdom is a feast, and you've been invited in. And so I think for us today, we want to be careful that we never turn Christianity into something burdensome or harsh or cruel or heavy. Last I checked, Jesus was lifting the heavy burdens. Can I get an amen to that? And so just make sure that you say, no, the kingdom of heaven, even going to church for that matter, it should be a fun thing. It should be a joyous occasion. It should be something that lifts my life and builds my life and that I take unbelievable pleasure in. The kingdom is a feast, and that's an awesome thing. Next observation is this, is that everyone has been invited. So he starts with Israel in this parable as the ones being invited first. But when they reject it, he goes, fine, go get everybody now. And he even says the bad and the good. And I love that idea because I was talking about this with my son just the other day. And we were talking about heaven and judgment and afterlife and whatever. And so we got into this idea of that God has invited the bad people and the good people. You just got to come, and God won't leave you the way that he found you. And I'm not saying that it's okay to stay in that shape, but just know this, I'm not getting into heaven based on how good I am anyway. This is not a meritocracy thank the Lord. This is by His goodness. This is by His mercy. This is by His grace that I'm just happy to have gotten the invitation, and all you have to do is say yes to that thing. And it's a beautiful thing that everyone's been invited in. And there's other parables like this. There's another parable very similar that talks about go into the highways and the byways and compel them to come in. And so, again, the kingdom is a feast and you've been invited in. But guess what? God's grace is inviting and drawing everyone in, and whoever will come to the Lord and say yes. And that's why we think about the words of the Apostle Paul when he says that those that believe in their heart and confess with their mouth, they shall be saved. And so that's what you're looking for. You're just looking for somebody to respond with a big yes to that unbelievable and great invitation. And so anyway, cool parable. Read the whole thing for yourself, church. I love you. God bless you. Be encouraged today that the kingdom is a feast and you've been invited in. Amen, church. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow.